working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin.
Hail Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff and with me are Jay McKenzie and Karl Folk. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. It's been a really eventful week, guys. We have a lot to talk about. Everything from finally seeing some real sustained pushback on the part of your Democratic electeds in Washington on what's going on with Elon and the Doge kids. You're also seeing the tariffs that Trump talked about not turning into anything. He walked away from that after what looked like, one weekend. And conveniently, the stock market did some interesting stuff as a result of that too. So, Jay, why should anyone take them seriously at this point when they threaten tariffs? Why should we even consider this to be a thing anymore when he does it?
Well, that's the problem, right? Because if they actually go through with it, they actually make the threats, and then the day comes and the tariffs actually happen, well, then chaos will ensue, and the aftershocks are just going to keep hitting us. So it's a hard thing if you're reporting on it, because you have to take them seriously, even if they're not that serious. The stuff with China does appear to be possibly going forward, and China prepared retaliatory tariffs because of what Trump is threatening, and that is probably going to lead to more retaliation from Trump, and God only knows where that ends. So it's such a mess. You have to report on it because it does affect stock prices. And when you have markets going crazy and Trump says the tariffs are coming, and then we had a lot of billions of dollars invested in shorting those stocks, assuming that the tariffs are actually going to go through, then he doesn't do it and the stocks recover. But, if you knew about the plan 10 minutes before he actually sends his Truth Social post out or gives an announcement, you could make an awful lot of money off of that. If you happen to be in the room, if you're the one whispering in Trump's ear, and that's one of those things that we have no idea who's doing that. And if they are, there certainly isn't any oversight into this.
No.
So
exactly.
It's a complete mess. There's so much money that is changing hands, and there's just no way to track what they're doing, what they intend to do, what they plan to do, don't plan to do, who knows about it, who doesn't know about it, and could it change on a dime? Absolutely it could. This is not the way government is supposed to work, but for now it is, because Trump only gave it a month. We won't do tariffs on Mexico for a month. So in a month, maybe a lot of people are about to get a whole lot richer.
And it seems like a few people already did, just based on what the trading looked like the day it happened. There's definitely some people that seemed like they had the word on what was about to happen. So we're looking at that. We're looking at people finally starting to realize that they can push back on this, that, you're an elected member of Congress. If you show up and start really demanding access to these buildings, you're not arguing with the FBI or the, Federal Protective Service or somebody who actually has any real authority here. You're arguing with a security guard from Triple Canopy, which is part of the merger that included the company that those of you who are old heads will remember called Blackwater, right? So that's who we're dealing with here instead of actual real cops. And they're just going to have to call the real cops at some point. You're not going to really risk anything. And you're a congressperson. The question is, are the DC cops really going to arrest you over this? Karl, do you think that this is a good place for some of these people to start kind of like cashing in their privilege, as it were?
Yeah, I think we're at the point where elected officials are going to have to press it a little bit in a way that they never have. And especially with a private security firm that has so many ties to different parts of the far right, like their larger apparatus. And, to be clear, this company has a contract through DHS and has been there for a while. This isn't something that rolled in with Musk necessarily, but it's a good moment to really bring light to this, right? Like, this is a non-governmental police force that has ties to a major player in the far right, as well as some other very wealthy individuals. And they're acting as the de facto defense force now for what is a coup.
Yes.
And when you have those two things in kind of a constellation, I think it's hard to see any other way than to force the hand here. And not by the general population, but by elected officials. Because this is going to have to be now, there's going to have to be the next iteration of this, which is really not just getting to the bottom of it, but like, now there actually does have to be a conversation about how we bring in a legal mechanism where there may not be
Right.
to start to get into these buildings. And no one really knows right now what that looks like. There isn't a good mechanism. We don't have some kind of like system where this has ever been talked about really publicly, at least. And it's one of the fears that the framers had, but like they didn't think about it in this way, right? Where you'd have an unelected, foreign-born plutocrat rolling in to raid the internal systems of government with a full then cover by a majority then of the party in power. Like, that just was not really something that was talked about outside of some of the fears in like the Federalist Papers and some weird obscure stuff that gets a little bit further away from it.
Sure.
But yeah, at this point, like, we're going to have to push things a little bit, and people are going to have to get much more vehement about how we address this. Because if they're going to just put non-governmental forces in the way of every attempt to get any kind of clarity on this, while obstructing on the other side and appearing to ignore certain legal orders, this is not a constitutional crisis. This is some sort of state capture by an unelected actor.
Right. An unelected, because constitutional crisis implies that there's like two differing interpretations of the Constitution here.
Correct.
And that's not what we're seeing.
Correct.
We're seeing one side just doesn't give a fuck.
Right. And that's, this is really, this is the kind of the worst case scenario, right? And like, you have to have the conversations now around that problem, right? And like, we're starting to, which is great, but at the same time, like, this is, you have members of the inside investigation teams within Treasury saying that Musk is an inside threat. Their language, right? And Wired is reporting that right now, and like, that is, unbelievable, right? Like, the fact that 3 hours ago, roughly from the time of us recording this on Friday night, it's coming out that there are internal emails flying around saying that Doge operatives are, quote, an insider threat, and that it recommends immediately suspending their access, right?
Yes.
Like, we're into a place now where, after removing people like the Inspector General, the other apparatus here, we're starting to see something kind of float out of the day-to-day workers again, showing that this isn't just business as usual. This is an attack. Like, this is an attack on the country. Right? Like, and I think that, for a lot of people, they're trying to gauge where this actually is. And the reality is, we're under attack by a very sophisticated, it appears, group of individuals who have the full cover of the party in power to do what appears to be pinpointed attacks against the digital infrastructure that undergird democracy. That's the worst case scenario, right? And one that most people didn't see coming. Now we have to deal with that. And that is going to mean confronting some of these moments where people are going to have to, at an elected level, really say, like, I've got to cash in my privilege points right now as an elected leader, and put myself in a position between the gears and the machine, And I,
Right.
I do wonder when that's going to happen. I think, seeing how some of this is starting to unfold with people like Brian Schatz and others saying some very real stuff, and people like Raskin coming out and saying it's a coup, is going to have an effect here. It may just be delayed, right? Like we don't tend to move very fast in this country, but once we start moving, it does happen. And I think this is starting to break through. Like Monday night, we kind of, I think, started to pierce the veil into everyday life where people are like, wait, what? My money's where? With who? And then you start talking about Big Balls and how he's a neo-Nazi, he's associated with neo-Nazis and stuff. And now they're coming out that a bunch of these guys are associated with Kiwi farms and other places like that. People are going to not just ask questions, but make correct assumptions based on what they've seen, which is these are a bunch of groypers or other variety of right-wing younger shithead, and they now have access to the most critical systems in the country. That's going to wake a lot of people up much more quickly than a lot of things. And that is, I think, something that's going to be across the borders of, politics and other things, right? Like, people don't want to find out that someone like Musk has their hand in their wallet.
No, but they do.
Yeah. And to be clear, for those who don't know what Kiwi Farms is, it is filled with the worst people on the internet. If you've heard of 4chan and the trolling that came to 4chan and resulted in Gamergate, these are the people who thought Gamergate didn't go far enough. They will dox, harass, threaten anyone they don't like, particularly women and trans people. They will SWAT anyone who gets in their way. They will post any information. They will initiate or hire someone for cyber attacks or to hack someone's personal emails or accounts. Anything that can be done to hurt someone, they will do it, and it will be coordinated as a group through Kiwi Farms. And these are the people that Musk has hired. At least one of them was active on Kiwi Farms and is currently doing God knows what with your personal information and data. And that is terrifying. And
well, I mean, there's the other part now too, which is that they are now in charge of the Department of Energy. So they have access to every nuclear secret, the department who controls our nuclear weapons and our nuclear stockpile. I mean, we're starting to get into a territory where you have Nazi incels in control of the largest nuclear force on the planet. And people do need to know, right?
Yeah.
We actually do need to have this as a much larger part of the conversation.
Yeah, the Cold War's over, but the nukes are still out there.
They're still there.
Thousands of them.
It sounds ridiculous to say it. It sounds ridiculous to say that Nazi incels have now taken over a good chunk of the nuclear infrastructure of the United States. Well, welcome to 2025.
Yeah,
welcome to... it was ridiculous, but unfortunately...
Big Ball's going to launch a nuke for the lulz. I mean, that's where we're at with this.
Well, it's February 7th, and we're talking about Nazi incels controlling the nuclear arsenal of the wealthiest nation in history.
And we're not projecting. We're not exaggerating.
It's not an
exaggeration
here at all.
No,
this is how it is.
Yeah, no, and
you can go look.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, we're getting into a territory where, for a lot of people, this is going to start to sound increasingly conspiratorial, and it's all true, right? Like, it's going to be very important for people to keep bringing people along, because there is going to be a lot of info here very quickly that everyone needs to get on board with to fully assess and understand the threat we face and how pervasive it's going to be if they get control of key agencies. And yes, there have been court actions that have started to push back against a few of these things, and whatever now is going to happen with USAID and the court order with that saying that they're going to put a stop to the closure and rehire everyone and bring it all back, there are going to be some real questions now. And I think that's going to open the avenue to more of this, right? Where we are going to have to get people on the page with okay, well, this is what happened now. And so it completely has shifted the direction of how we're going to have to understand some of this.
One thing I wanted to say is, obviously, this sounds completely nuts. And everyone that we follow and listen to said the trouble with talking about this moment is that you sound crazy. But if you go back and look at our records and the way that we've discussed disinformation, extremists, all this, people that we call out are usually on the right because usually the craziest shit is coming from the right. But we are more than happy to call out people pushing blue and on bullshit from the left. Go look at what we had
and we will
about
do it
Jim
again.
Stewartson, and we will do it again. Some of it is people who don't know any better. Some of it is bad actors. Some of it is going to be people that the right puts in your way to take a crazy thing to another level, to break people's brains, to force this unreality upon them. So we have tried and will try very hard to remain grounded and to keep you grounded. And that's how we move forward.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
Stay
and that is
grounded.
going, yeah. And staying grounded right now is going to mean having conversations that include the words Nazi incel groypers and groyper adjacent groups controlling nuclear weapons.
Being ready
And
to show those receipts, being
Yeah.
ready to like sit
Yeah.
somebody down with your
Yeah.
phone and say, look, read this. I
Yeah.
know it sounds nuts. Believe me. If I
Because
was
it
just coming
is.
into this, I would think it was insane and that everybody was just a paranoid, but no, it's true.
No, it's true. And like, that's the thing, you know, I mean, look at who they've appointed. I mean, Beatty, you know, like they're putting guys who are the real deal into positions of true power, and guys who believe some of the gnarliest fascist and neo-fascist stuff out there. The reality is staying grounded is going to sound initially very, very, very jarring. But the reality is, it's because it is. It's not because it's outlandish. It's because what's happened is through the looking glass Alice in Wonderland shit, and it's happened in less than 20 days.
Yeah. You're not imagining things, friendo. It is what it is right now. And
Yeah.
you can think, man, how did we get to this? And that's the whole point of a lot of what they're doing, is to get you
Yeah.
to kind of just tune out and think,
Yep.
this is just too big. I can't look at it. I can't comprehend what's going on here. There's too much here. Well, that's what a lot of this is all about, is getting you to that point.
And they're not hiding it. I
No.
listened to Steve Bannon today. He's openly talking about it. The strategy has been flooding the zone with shit, and he's talking about it, and he's saying it's working, saying we have to keep doing it. They are mocking and berating anyone who's trying to oppose it. They want you to feel little and small and cringe, because that's how they get you. They are reveling in your despair, in the feelings of hopelessness. They love it. And it's totally natural to feel those things, but you have to push past it. You have to know that they are intentionally doing this to you, and you beat it by just saying, fuck it, and you keep going.
No, and that's just it, right? I think people need to understand there's a terror campaign from the highest offices in the land and by the party in charge, because that is a crucial part of what they're doing right now for that exact reason. They want people to tune out. They want people too scared to act, and they want people to start thinking about what might be, not what is. Because for modern authoritarians, they very rarely use violence compared to their older compatriots. What they do weaponize much more effectively is the threat of violence. It's the, it's kind of the, oh, you can hear someone screaming from another room thing, right? Right now, they don't have the ability to control us as a nation, and they probably never will, without massive technological innovation and a massive push for paramilitary. It's just not going to happen. So now, the goal then is to keep us in control until the damage is so sufficient that they don't have to do it anymore, because the damage is done. So they're going to get more angry the less fearful we are. That gives us an avenue to real power over them, which is to say, you know what? Bring it, motherfuckers. What do you got? What do you really have besides some loud fucking voices? Besides, you have the gears of government. But like me, fuck off. You're not going to be able to hold the whole thing hostage. Sorry, not how it works. And frankly, pushing them to the point where they are the outrageous actor against, again, what we were talking about earlier, people who are nonviolent, carrying flags, chanting. If you make them look outrageous, you win.
Yes.
So now it's all about, like, they use that to troll for years. So fuck it. The way you beat a troll is you don't get emotional. You just say, fuck it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me
Yeah.
And my friends, right now,
You
when
got
you
nothing.
couldn't control 2 major metropolitans in this country for more than a month,
Yeah.
like, come the fuck on. And it's one of the, that it's just it. It's all projection.
Mhm.
They do not have the power they project. And that's why they do it. And it's also why they're such fucking cowards. The minute that gets pierced, like with Musk this weekend, oh, that's illegal. You can't unmask the Nazi friends of mine trying to gut government. Fuck you. Yes, we can and we will. Thank you very
Just
much.
did do something about it.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
You got to
Like,
take
and that's
control
just
on
it.
them,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
all you can
He
really
gave
do.
up real quick on that.
Yeah,
They didn't
'cause
even
they're-
try to fight it because they can't do shit.
They're fucking cowards.
Mhm.
They want you afraid. Fuck it. You know what you get to do then? The best thing, the easiest thing for Americans, which is be an irritated and totally unafraid person of all consequences, because as Americans, that's what we do best. Oh, let's be the most irritating people on the planet then. Cool. We're
Yep.
used to it.
Yep.
Fuck these people. You want to have a nice dinner? Eat shit, dude. I'm sorry your friends are trying to take over our democracy.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
You
like,
don't get to rest. Forget
That's
it.
our
happening.
that's our shit. Like, that is
Mhm.
in our genes as a country, is to walk up and be like, oh, well, that's fucking funny. I didn't see you be made king. Fuck off. And that's literally where we've been for 250 plus years.
Yes.
So you know what? Bring it the fuck back. These guys will fold if
Yeah.
we push them hard enough.
And make no mistake, we're starting to see that push. And
Yes.
I want to give some props to something that I was pretty skeptical about. I'm not endorsing this as a wholesale tactic at this point, but shout out to the 50501 movement, 5051, because I've been paying attention to this for a while. I watch weird stuff like this. It's a kind of a hobby of mine. I had questions, serious ones, about what these people were up to, but last week they were able to get a ton of people out nationally using nothing really but a Reddit page and some flyers that I saw and was like, what the fuck is this? But they were able to get people what looked like in all 50 states. They achieved their goal. There was no violence. Nothing went sideways. They did a pretty good job. And looking at their stuff, I don't think there's a whole lot of professionals that have done protests, that have done organizing in this group. They seem to be, and I could be wrong here, right? I'm hedging really bad, I know, but they seem to be what they are purporting to be at this point, which is a bunch of normies who have had enough and are pissed off about this and didn't know what else to do. So, big ups. They got thousands of people out in the street. They got 1,500 in the state capitol in Washington and Olympia, and they got 1,500 on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
This isn't
No,
the easiest thing in the world to do, but they got it out. And so if they keep doing what they're doing, this is definitely something that they're going to have to pay attention to at some point. If this becomes the new Occupy.
Yeah,
And it
well,
might.
and that's the thing, right? Like, people right now, because of all of this, the bad information environment, the incredibly fast movement of the authoritarian threat, all of the fuck. People are looking for answers. They're looking for something they can do to help. People, like the polling coming out today, if that's any indication, 60% of this country is looking to work together to stand against what is going on. And that number is increasing, not decreasing. That is a number that's going up. And that's going on right as Musk's numbers are going down.
Plummeting.
Other numbers
Plummeting.
plummeting. Fucking
Yes.
falling off the
The
cliff.
Tesla
support
sales
for-
are off everywhere. Germany is down like 75%. Spain worse. They aren't selling
Although-
Teslas anywhere at this point.
You've got the Polish interior minister saying they should boycott Tesla altogether.
Yes.
It's getting worse, and
Based.
the pressure
Yeah.
pressure is working, and the support in the U.S. for Musk to be very involved. The latest polling has got that dropping 20% since Trump won. So it's working.
Right. Well, and reality is we on this one, we don't actually have to do any work. They're doing the damage to themselves. What we have to do now, because no other mechanism exists, is be the enforcement mechanism, which means being loud as hell, being irritating as fuck to everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone involved, everyone,
Don't let
Democrat,
them off the hook.
Republican,
Nope.
no one. And you continue to turn up the fucking volume every day until things either are returned to normal or until this shit gets really, really fucking loud.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, this is it. It's on us now. We're the cavalry for each other. And like, you know, to go back, we're the ones we've been looking for. So why not
Hey,
make
Jello,
it
we
fucking
became
loud?
the media.
Yep.
That's the thing, though, right? You're absolutely right, Karl. Turn up the volume because look, we have to operate at that volume because the right operates at that volume every day. I mean, yes,
Exactly.
Musk and what they're actually doing right now is supercharged, but right-wing media is always this. They've just now
Exactly.
finally followed through with that talk into action, but
Yep.
it has been nonstop since, I mean, really Trump walked down or went down the escalator. But it is
Before
grown
that
and
even.
grown and grown.
Before
Yeah.
that even, right? Like that was the Tea Party, was the volume going up
Yeah, it was.
constantly. And
Shit.
so like that's, and even before that, there were other avenues they were using.
It's just you're right. The volume has maintained for longer. It's just the listeners, the people that are actually hearing it and engaged with it has grown and grown and grown and grown. And now it's pretty much the entire right wing. But like, there is no, let's take a break. There is no, oh, we got a victory. We just have to let things calm down. Oh, we have to keep going. You have to match them tit for tat all the time because they never let up. They never stop. Like it's the kind of thing, you know, if you run a daily show or daily podcast, right? If you're Steve Bannon or Charlie Kirk or any of these guys, sometimes they take a day off or they're going somewhere, but they always have a guest host. Because they don't take a day off. They don't stop the show for a day because that's ceding ground. That's ceding territory. So we can't do that either.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? Like there's something to be said. Like you can win a war by losing every battle.
Yeah.
But the key to doing that is you exhaust the opposition to the point where they no longer can sustain the battle or the war or anything else. And then you can mount not just effective pushback, but you can destroy it. And there's going to be a little bit of all of this involved, right? Like there's going to be no single way this is going to be dealt. The blows needed. This is going to come from a number of different avenues over an extended period. But right now we're in the most critical period, right? Like this week, this weekend, the next few days after that, like this is the real deal now. And so the volume has gotten loud, but now it's got to get so much louder that like it's almost impossible to break through anything else but that noise, right? Because like that's starting to move out from where we've started seeing it and where it started, and that's good. But the louder it gets, it doesn't just go out further, it stays out there longer. And that's important because what'll happen is the media in some cases won't, they're just totally unwilling to. In some cases though, especially outside of the country, they're going to start to take that view, right? And ultimately, this is a narrative, right? Like as much as it is everything else, this is about the narrative that goes along with American democracy. And it's, you know, I keep hammering this, but like whoever holds the symbolic part and holds the imagery and aesthetic of multiracial democracy is going to be in a much better position when things get out of hand, because it becomes much harder for a regime force to create a narrative that they are not doing something wrong when the people they are fighting in the streets are wrapped in the flag and literally singing the songs of American history and whatever. You really can't spin that in any other way than this is an act of aggression against the people of America. Yeah. And that's, you know, like going forward, that's part of the conversation we all have to have, right? Like is some of this is going to get weird because we're going to have to adopt a little bit more of the American aesthetic because it's going to offer not just protection, but an avenue to crack through the right-wing bullshit and a narrative that they've tried to create where they are the true patriots. And so like we have to, and that'll start to neuter them, right? Like the more you can do that and make them fight an image, not just, and the myth and the ideology behind the image, not just the people, the more power the movement has.
Definitely.
Well, and they just say this all the time. They say that anyone who opposes them hates America.
Yep.
And we don't. Of course we don't.
No, we
I
don't.
love
No.
this country.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's okay to say that. It's okay to show that. I mean, one of the biggest avenues for Russian propaganda, and when they attacked the 2016 election, was now kind of cringe and awful boomer memes, but it was all wrapped in patriotism. It was all the names they use, the images they use. Like, they knew that this could reach people just naturally, instinctively, without even thinking about it. You put the flag out there and it reaches a certain number of people, a certain audience. And we have to do something to counter that, because it is just instinctive for Americans to love the flag and love their country. And look, if you don't want to wave the flag yourself, that's fine. If you have an issue with things that America has done, okay, good. I do too.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we should talk about those. I have issues with things that America, the government, is doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hate my country. I hate what these assholes are doing to it. And it's okay to show that with a flag. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, you don't, like I was saying earlier, you don't have to take the American flag, right? Like, if you don't want to carry an American flag, carry one of the super badass Revolutionary War flags that different regiments and different groups carried into different battles. Those are
Boy, did they ever get a lot of mileage out of the appeal to heaven, didn't they?
That's kind of where I'm going, right? Like, there are, like, the imagery and the aesthetic of democracy is incredibly powerful, and we have a lot of it at our disposal. And the right intentionally tried to take those because they understood their symbology and the power that myth that holds those together has. But what happens is, if you can't control that and you become the authoritarian party, you lose right to those images and that aesthetic and that symbology. So that means we have to reclaim it. And there's actually something incredibly powerful about thinking about, let's say, in some form of, let's say, communist bloc, taking one of the older forms of the American flag and reusing it. That's awesome. Fuck yes. You're doing two things at once, right? Like, you're giving yourself some cover, but you're also then reinforcing this other thing, that America is a lot of things. It's not one thing. So, like, all these ideologies, whether you're an anarchist, whether you're a communist, whether you're a green, whether you're a democratic socialist, a liberal Democrat, you can all find your stars and stripes. It doesn't mean that you then have to adopt the ideology of that symbol. It means you're using it to be able then later to have the conversations we all have to have about America and what it needs to be going forward, not what it's been in the past. And doing that feels weird, but it gives you those doorways and opens pathways that won't be open if you don't.
The only way that you're potentially going to get that America that might end up being something better than what we have right now is if we can beat this thing back. If we can somehow find a way to stop Doge, to stop Elon, to stop Trump, to stop all of this shit, then we can possibly sit down, look at where we went wrong, not just here, but where we went wrong historically. Where were the problems that led to all of this shit in the first place? And we have to come up with some new guardrails, like you guys were saying earlier, the idea that, like, an oligarch who is foreign born could somehow buy a president and turn that president into essentially a puppet of what they wanted to do was just not something that was on the founding fathers' radar. This was not a possibility that they apparently had planned for. Well, once we get rid of this guy, we have to plan for that possibility because it happened. And if we ever want to have that better America, this is where it starts. And this is where it starts getting that way.
Yeah, it starts with a declaration for a better future, right? Like, we have to establish that what happens going forward once we do beat these forces looks more like the reconstruction efforts that were stymied by the very same forces 160 years ago, right? Like, at the end of the Civil War, the same forces that have coalesced now coalesced then to end Reconstruction. So we have to do the hard work then of actually building the society that we promised and never gave any of us. But it has to revolve around something that's going to require, like, almost truth and reconciliation at the highest levels.
Yeah.
where this isn't going to be the America of 1995 or 2015. This is going to be something new because it has to be, and because what was before is gone.
Yeah.
There's no going back.
There's not. Biden tried. Biden was
Nope.
the last attempt to turn back the clock, and it failed. He tried, and it failed. And what we got on the other side of that is so much worse than what came before it. So yes, it does have to be something different, something better. We need a leader who is not a madman who steps up to the podium and says that the U.S. is going to endorse ethnic cleansing in Gaza.
Right.
The only historical parallel to this with what Elon Musk is doing with Doge that I can think of is the East India Company coming in to India and the Mughal Empire and stripping it for parts with a few men, coming in at a time when the empire is weak enough and vulnerable enough, and with the right push, everything just collapses. And that's what the East India Company did hundreds of years ago, and that's what Elon Musk is doing right now. At the end of the day, while the British made themselves appear to be this indomitable, unstoppable force that the Indian people just couldn't rid themselves of, once they actually unified and got together, they realized how tenuous their grasp on power really was. And I think it's the same thing with Musk. Yes, it's power. Yes, it's scary. Yes, they're in control, and it is a coup, and it is ongoing. But if we push hard enough in the right places, it can all collapse very quickly.
Right. I mean, when your foundation is built on unreality and a series of interconnected lies and conspiracies, you inherently don't have something that's very strong, right? And so, that's where all of this starts to merge into, taking back some of that just enough to start to edge into that. Because once you pierce the veil, it collapses. They don't actually have a plan B if their narrative collapses, because there's no other narrative that actually is strong enough to hold cohesion for all of the different groups they've brought together. And it's going to be increasingly hard for them, especially as the base gets a little bit more weary, as more of these reports about, unelected leader Musk taking over their Social Security and Medicare, and their farms aid through USAID has been disbanded. Yeah. People are going to start to click in. And that's going to be really, once that starts happening at a high enough rate, their story isn't going to matter, because the reality will have pierced the veil. And once you have people out of the bubble, it's almost impossible to bring them back in without something that,
they took the red pill, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, you truly, it's going to be very hard for the guys in the red pill community to get these people back if they leave.
Right.
Well, and that's one thing when we look at Elon Musk's Doge army, and they are little groyper kids. They're adults.
Yes,
but they are groypers. They are neo-Nazis. They are retweeting Nick Fuentes and saying nice things about Andrew Tate. They are involved with Kiwi farms and apparently talking about keeping the Daily Stormer alive, which, if you don't know it, I don't go looking, but it is the worst neo-Nazi website out there. Look, the right's come back for a lot of this for the longest time, for years and years, has been, if we out a Nazi, they say, the left thinks everyone is a Nazi. They think everyone who's a Trump supporter is an extremist and a Nazi. And I think part of that was getting their audience to tune out. So when there is reporting, when people say, hey, these kids working for Elon Musk are Nazis, the right is instinctively going to go to, you just call everyone Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but look at it, but show it to people.
Yeah.
Show them the articles, let them read it for themselves, explain it to them, say, here is a source, here is a real publication, notably Wired, Wired has been on top of all of this like no one else right now. But look, they wouldn't publish this if they thought they were going to get sued or get in trouble, because Elon Musk and Trump have both shown that they will sue anyone they can, but they're not going to sue over this. And it's published and it hasn't been retracted because it's true. because these are not like, well, the left thinks anyone who supports Trump is a Nazi. No, we don't. But we think these people, these specific people who are Nazis. They're Nazis.
Yeah, because they are. They've self-identified. Funny enough, when you self-identify, it's no longer in the realm of, well, everyone you say is everyone you hate is a Nazi. No, that actually goes out the window, because again, absolute truth is actually a pretty good defense. Funny enough, like, lawyers are right about that, and it's irritating to say that because, sorry, lawyers, y'all know what you are, but like, it's tough. And that's the thing. For them, they're going to start to run into really, truly, like, some larger effects here. And I don't know, we don't know what their response is going to be, but we've already seen that they're not taking it well now. And if we do more now, the better we are later.
And they're always going to act like it doesn't affect them. They're fine. They're invincible. None of this has any effect. We're going to keep going, and you can't stop us. That is going to be the playbook. That is going to be the message they put out of there until they are kicked out, until they are kicked to the curb and gone. They will never stop saying they're winning and no one can touch them. So you just ignore it, because it's always the baseline.
It's always bullshit too. Like, any fascist claims of invincibility are met with an Esso station and a bunker. Like, nothing in this is inevitable except that they are squishy little bags of meat like the rest of us. And that's just the reality, right? Like, there's no 1,000-year Reich coming for these people. They're not going to get what they want ultimately, because they, like us, suffer from being fucking mortal. And as much as Musk and them believe they're the modern Ubermensch and pharaohs, the pharaohs ended up in fucking jars. They didn't make it to some better place. They made it into someone's pilfered museum stash and some wealthy person's living room mantle. No one's invincible. No one's inevitable, and absolutely no one lives forever, and nor does their belief. And like, these guys have projected so much of this that, like, the minute it actually starts to get questioned, what reserve do they have left? You guys, you guys have spent as much time in the trenches of actually dealing with the far right as I have. What do they have left to turn to that isn't going to immediately paint them as the thing they are?
They really don't. And the thing is, it's hard not to look at those protests that happened last Wednesday and not feel like there is this massive well of untapped energy out there on our side.
Yes.
That is just getting started.
No, I jokingly said, like, the thing that the Japanese said after they bombed Pearl Harbor, which is, we may have made a mistake and woken up the giant. And this is the thing, like, America, I think I said this earlier this week and I think last week, like, America takes some time to do things. We're slow as shit. We don't like listening to people. We're irritating. We're really not conformists. But once we do start to get behind each other and start to actually do the thing, we turn into a fucking sledgehammer.
Yes.
And the Republicans seem to believe that sledgehammer doesn't happen just naturally.
No.
Right? Like, this is a part of our society, and part of our kind of social makeup is, like, we take some time to get behind something, but if we do get behind something truly, get the fuck out of the way. Get the fuck out of the way. Yeah, literally. Like, we are a nation full of industry ants.
Indeed.
We will just clear out and come back, and it's a cartoon at that point. It's just stripped bare, and we'll do what we need to. That's the problem, though, right? Like, America, you don't want it generally, because then we actually get things done. And historically, if it's not fighting fascists in Europe, that's doing terrible things to people. And like, it's tough, right? We have a couple different modes, but once you get them moving, it's hard to get us out of those. And like, the right, I don't think fully understands that, like, the energy is not on their side as much as they've tried to project this level of energy in their supporters. Have we seen any reports or videos of Trump supporters out there supporting Elon Musk gutting the fucking government? Do you think?
I don't think you will.
No, and that's what I was about to say. Think about 2020 and where these people were literally protesting fucking hospitals because they were trying to save people's lives. These people have shown they have zero fucking souls when it comes to what they want to do. Then why the fuck are they not doing that? Well, because there's actually no support for it, and they can't even manufacture it because they'd have to manufacture not just a bunch of Proud Boys and shithead Nazis marching around like, you will not replace us. They don't have a message of support for it.
No, the cult of
that's
personality extends to one person, one man, and that is Donald Trump.
Yep.
And when he's gone, whenever that is, whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now, it cannot be replaced. It can't be replaced by his children. It can't be replaced by J.D. Vance, and it certainly can't be replaced by Elon Musk, who, for the most part, the right has tolerated. He's not a likable guy. He's not.
No,
he's just not. He's awkward and he's weird and he's cringe and he's annoying. And people are never
just not.
No, it's never going to happen. So that's the part where it really does feel like a codependent relationship, because Trump's never going to have Elon's money. He's never going to come even close. But Elon is never, ever going to have that kind of support behind him. And it doesn't matter how much money he throws at people. People just don't like him. And he's very sensitive about that too. Let's be honest.
It's obvious. I mean, it's obvious, he's got a complex, right? Like, this is a guy who definitely has a complex. I'm not going to get into that because I don't really give a shit, but it's kind of funny to see a guy who never worked through his problems and his therapy as being an authoritarian shitbag. Like, he does kind of confirm some jokes that have been floating around for years. And like, it's one of those things though, like, that actually is one of those things that, again, I think we're talking about unintended consequences of reactionary thinking, right? Where it's like, we're just going to do this and fuck everyone. Most people, when they find someone off-putting, do not give a shit how much good they're doing if the person is off-putting enough. And Musk is a terribly off-putting person. Like, just, across the board, he's, and so for that, like, this is a really interesting dynamic. This is something totally new kind of in the authoritarian spectrum, because you do have these two differing kind of methodologies and thought processes coexisting, but it's really, at some point one has to believe that Trump will get the picture that his power will be in threat.
The old joke about politicians is that, who would you want to have a beer with? But I don't know. For me, I wouldn't want to have a beer in the same bar as Elon Musk. I just think he zaps the joy and happiness out of any room.
He's an energy vampire. The man is Colin Robinson, right? Like, he has the fucking personality of Colin Robinson.
He does.
And that's a fucking nightmare, right? Like, no one wants to be around a guy who just sucks to be around. And that's the thing. Like, he sucks so much his dad's like, fuck this guy. Right? Like, that says something, right? Like, when your family is like, yo, fuck this guy. That's, we have a couple of these people in this administration. RFK's entire family is like, yo, fuck that guy. You have Musk's family, dad, who isn't, I'm not saying handed to his dad, by the way. I don't want to get messages about this on Blue Sky. I'm not saying handed to his dad, but the dude is so lame that his dad, who's terrible, is like, fuck this guy. Like, that says something. And for all of America's problems with voting and with politics, we are vibe-based. The dude sucks. His vibes are terrible. People hate that shit. We can use this to our advantage and should.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Yep. Agreed.
And we will.
Mm-hmm.